start, I just want to say I met a lot of cool artists over the weekend because OhioCon is in Ohio, which features only original art by the Artist Alley, which I've never been to a convention where the Artist Alley was only original art. So there weren't any superheroes, there weren't any anime or comic fan art. It was just original. So I got to do walkarounds and I was pretty impressed. Like there were a couple artists in particular that really kind of blew my mind in terms of their work. So I'm going to show some of them with you because I met with them for a while and we ended up doing some art trades. So the first one is a girl named Shy. She does this kind of art. She's very strong with like lines. Let me see if I can just. This was one of the ones that I really liked because I've been drawing hands a lot, so I could kind of relate to her on that. But she had her own little art book here, and let me just show you an example. Let me find a page that I really liked. And it was just interesting talking with them and kind of getting more insight on how they go about their process and seeing their line work in their detail. I mean, this whole sketchbook is really wonderful, but so like something like this. It's very intricate. It's very bold and very confident. It's line work that I can definitely appreciate, and just seeing more traditional art at a convention was just awesome in general because this is the first time I brought traditional art and I sold out of almost everything, so that was just a nice kind of welcoming surprise. The second artist was Coey, and he's actually dating Shy, so they're a couple that have been together for like 10 years, and then he does stuff like this, which is also very fantastical, kind of otherworldly, ethereal. I really, really liked his work as well. Here's another example of like that clean line art. And I'll put a link to their work in the community post that this stream was in, just so you can check out their work if you're interested. Oh, and they also did like these neat little enamel pins. I decided I'm gonna start making pins soon, so I'm excited for that. And these stickers, which are really cool. Actually, Key got me these. Uh, and the other little thing before we keep going is I got this spooky little awesome ring. It's wonderful. I thought that was cute. Okay. I'm trying to think if there's any other big thing at the convention this weekend. Mainly, I just met a lot of awesome artists, and honestly, the people that came up to my booth, it was refreshing to see like so many warm personalities and people that were just in a good mood. It really did start off my convention season in like the right beat. But one artist in particular gave me this here. So the hollowed artist actually is a follower of CG Cookie, and they met me at the con and gave me this fan red art. I don't know why I have such a problem pointing. There. Right there. So I put her on the fridge and have the magnets hold her up, but that was one of the coolest experiences, like receiving a fan art of one of your characters at a convention. It was very surreal. So thank you again if you're watching. I just want to thank you, Chris. That was an awesome little gift and a great way to start my day that day. And I met a real life Red. It was really great because she bought my Red print, and as I was talking to her more, she was open to doing reference photos for me because she literally had buzz sides, hair that was pulled back in a ponytail, and I talked to her for a long time, and I was really just excited. She's gonna dye her hair red, and I'm gonna talk with her further about maybe doing some reference photo shoot. So that was also a cool experience. Overall, just A plus. I had an awesome time at this convention. Someone in the comments asked me about what other conventions I'll be at this year, and I will make a post because I know there's about 13 so far, and that list is still growing. So if any of you are going to be at a convention this year, there is a small chance that I'll be there too, and I would love to meet you. Okay, let me see here. So let's get this going officially. Hi everyone, I'm Tim Von Rieden, and welcome to the CG Cookie Concept weekly Wednesday live streams that we do every Wednesday at 2 p.m. Central Time. That's -6 GMT. And I usually post the topic about an hour or two beforehand. And today we're going to be doing a blending kind of explanation / technique exploration. And after that, I'm going to take some of what we're talking about and then apply it to a hand demonstration. So I'm going to paint a hand. And both of these were suggested by you guys in the community, specifically from Brandon Griffin, who wanted the blending technique. And I forgot who it was, but someone wanted me to do another skin tutorial. And I thought taking the references and the techniques that we're using today in the blending side can definitely be applied to the hand. And that's what we're going to be going over. Now, before I just jump into this, though, there is one thing I wanted to talk about. There was one artist that I talked to. I mean, there were many, many artists that I talked to over the weekend, like to a length, I would say. But there was one in specific that really kind of caught me off guard, and like literally as I was talking to them, it stopped my train of thought. I was kind of shocked by what they said, and they were talking about how their goals and how they work as an artist. And as I was telling them how I work through things and how I kind of plan my schedule and how I try to work every day on something. They were just kind of defeated and got to the point where they said, well, that's you. I could never be like that. That's not something I could be. And it kind of threw me off guard because I thought, like, when in your life did you decide for yourself that you can't? When did you decide that you are not worthy of success or becoming an artist that receives success, and you're limiting yourself? You're putting your own ceiling on how far you can grow, and it really it kind of shook me, because then I talked with this artist for like a good half hour after, just kind of explaining that you can't have that mentality. If you want to be successful as an artist, you cannot doubt yourself to that extent. It's truly damaging. So anyone on the stream, I want you guys to know kind of the same thing. Don't ever assume that you can't. Or if you look at an artist, or you're talking to an artist that maybe is more successful currently, and you just think, oh, I can't be that. That's them. That's their mentality. They're a harder worker than I am. They're a better artist than I am. As soon as you start to say these things, you start to believe it in your head, and you can't let those kind of seep into your brain, because then it does start to infect the way you think. So instead, I want you to start thinking, I will be that, or I'm going to work towards that, or things that are more positive, more encouraging. Because I was telling them how, 4 years ago, I started doing conventions and my booth looked horrible. I thought my products were just iffy, and my prints, they looked pretty bad. I didn't have much to sell. And I knew that I wasn't going to be one of the best looking booths or one of the best artists there, but I had to start trying, and you have to start somewhere. And like for me, that was my starting point. And in my head, I knew that that was not the end goal. My end goal, even now, I would still say my end goal is further along, but I'm going to be on that path continually. And yeah, I'm going to make mistakes, and I fail constantly. I've kind of learned to embrace failing. I think failing is essential for artists. And if you're one of those artists that are kind of afraid of starting, or feeling like you have to build up something first and then put yourself out there, you can't have that mentality. You got to jump right into it. Start doing it today. I can't explain enough how important it is that you don't put things off, or say, well, eventually I'll do it. Like that eventually will always be tomorrow, if you know what I mean. So just something that I wanted to share with you guys before we start the stream, because that it really did affect me, hearing this artist talk about themselves in such a negative way. And I thought it was just so unwarranted that it almost like it made me like passionate. It made me want to like share my passion with them, so that they can realize that they are a good artist. Because what they showed me, they were showing me their stuff on their phone. They're actually like pretty good, but the way they talked about themselves was just so demeaning, and it was awful. So I don't ever want to hear any of you guys talk about your art that way on the stream, or just in general. One of the rules that we have in the house with all the roommates is you can't be hard on your own art. You can't be, what's the word that we use? I forget what it is. But one of the rules is you can't talk down about your art, and you can't be self-depreciative. Or is that it? No, there's another word. I can't think of it though. And it really helps us, because then you start to have more of a positive mindset. And even when you know you're not feeling your best with a drawing, you know that, okay, you're just having a bad day, or maybe you're not feeling as inspired. Like go outside, do whatever it needs to, and then come back at it. Okay. So now that we got that little mini lecture out of the way, let's go ahead and start painting this. And like I said, I'm going to do kind of a 2-part live stream today. The first one is just me talking about different blending techniques, and then the second one is applying that to the hand demonstration. So before we jump into it, let me see if we have any questions. Oh, we definitely do. Let's go through just a couple before we start. Miss Chibi Artist says, I want to stalk those artists so much now. Yeah, they're fantastic. Actually, uh, Key is good friends with them, and they're going to be coming up here eventually and hanging out. So I'm excited to just see their process in person and how they draw. Terminal Glow says, I'm telling you that fridge is going to get filled big time. I mean, I hope so. We still got a whole bottom half that is empty and golden. So it's just shining bright behind me. Spyro1223 says, no problem at all. It was really fun doing that piece. Oh, you're Spyro. Okay, well, thank you, Spyro. That was awesome. That really made my day. Digital says, there might be some goodies on the way for your fridge. Well, awesome. I can't wait for that, Digital. I hung up your birthday gift that you gave me hanging above there. And I have Faith's tote bag that she made me. I decided I'm going to start hanging everything that's sent me behind here because I think it makes more sense for the people actually coming to the streams almost weekly to, put up their art and for me to show how much I appreciate it. I think it's awesome. So you all get golden fridges from me. Odalino Art. Oh, I totally butchered that username. I'm sorry. It says, I've heard from Peter Moorbacher that pins are a really bad idea for selling at cons. Everyone is going to buy pins and no prints only because pins are cheaper. What do you think of that? It's true. Actually, I was on a call with Peter last night. We were talking about the new Nintendo Switch, and he was working on his latest piece, which, by the way, is fantastic. I can't wait to see that one finished. But he's very right. I actually respect his opinion a lot. He's very blunt, and he doesn't sugarcoat things, which I appreciate. So I'm sure if I asked him how he would feel about me starting pins, he would be like, nope, Tim, that's a garbage idea. Like, go forward with it. But it's true. If you're at a convention, people will want to buy your lesser tiered products versus your higher tier just because then they can spread the wealth amongst the other artists. So it's kind of one of those things where if you're really passionate about wanting to do smaller things, like then you should do it. I think I might just make like a couple. I won't go crazy with it. I'm going to make a couple for my Kickstarter. And actually, I have an idea for you guys for these Twitch streams. I have a pin in mind. I'm not going to give any more info than that, but just know that I have something in the works. Eve says, I admire the way you draw hands. I'm really excited for this. Well, awesome. I'm excited for you guys to see this. Hands have become one of my favorite things to draw. It's one of those things that artists used to do where like whenever we would draw characters, we would like hide the hands in the pockets, or we would have the hands behind the back, or we would always do something where the hands would not be visible. And we got to break that habit. Instead, your character should have hands where they're like coming at the camera, or like really make the hands almost like a prominent feature of the piece, because then that shows that you're confident drawing hands and you're putting them right out there, and you're showing everyone that's looking at it that I can draw hands and I'm proud of the way I draw hands. And it's very liberating, honestly. If you don't like drawing hands, start drawing a hand every single day. I promise you won't regret it. Digital says, LOL, I just noticed my drawing on the wall. Yep, there it is. Wow, I'm really bad at the pointing thing. It's there. Okay. Sleepy Kawaii Mango says up, and that says, when have you ever failed? Oh boy. Okay. I almost wanted to make an entire blog post of all the times I have failed. And I think the most obvious are the contest. I have entered 9 contests and I've only placed in 2. Or no, I'm sorry. I entered 14 contests because I forgot about the League of Legends ones. And I've only placed, I guess then I placed in 3. So out of 14 contests, I've only placed in 3. And you know what? I'm going to keep doing contests. They're more fun for me and my roommates to compete in now, but I have failed a lot in contests. But when it comes to conventions, for example, I used to do buttons, like fan art little face buttons. And one of my things that I was going to try was doing magnets. Magnets was a huge failure. I was stuck with like 300 magnets that no one bought. And it was one of those territories that I wanted to explore, and I explored it. I realized, okay, this wasn't a good idea, but you know what? I'm glad I explored it so I can put that behind me and then have a new idea that I can explore now. One of the other things that didn't work for me was, oh man, I feel like there's a lot that I could talk about, but I want to think of like the more prominent ones as examples. Oh, I guess one of the ones I was going to do this year was have a really big booth set up and have it be elaborate and kind of almost gaudy for how big and elaborate I wanted it to be. But instead, for OhioCon, I stripped it down. I just did prints on a table, prints on a little wall, and that's all I had. And it was extremely successful. and I never thought of doing it this way, but it really worked out, and I don't think I would have done that had I not learned how the other booth setups didn't work as well. I failed with those. I feel eventually I will write an entire blog post of all the times I've failed in my life. I think it's good for you guys to see that with an artist that is perceived as doing well, like they're only perceived that way because of all the times they failed in their life have put them to that point where they now are successful in some way or another. CG Rifter says, a friend of mine likes to say, you don't get in shape to start an exercise program. You start an exercise program to get in shape. It's very true. It's the same thing. Liam Lockhart says, self-depreciating. Thank you. Yeah, you're not allowed to be self-depreciating. That was it. Pyro Heffer says, I remember when I used to never be able to think of what to draw. For the last few years, I have so many things I want to draw. I have to pick and choose what to actually dedicate my time to. Not enough time for all my ideas. Okay, just so you know though, when I hear people say I don't have enough time, in my mind that immediately translates into I don't manage my time well. So if drawing really is of importance and it's a priority for you in your life, you really got to put it as a priority. So maybe other things that aren't as important, and they could be frivolous things such as playing video games, movies, hanging out with friends maybe too much, going out on the weekends. I mean, if you would have met me in college, I never went out on the weekends except for like one night. There would be one night every week where I would go to a big party, I would dress up or whatever, but then the other nights of the weekend, I would just be drawing. That would be my Saturday night. I would just be at my computer for 8 hours with like a movie or 4 in the background, and then that was it. I wasn't the most fun person when it came to weekend parties, except for the fact that I threw a party every month and they were themed. But besides that, I was just drawing. So for you, I want you to really make the time to actually draw. I don't want to hear that I don't have enough time to draw, because we all have the same amount of time. And I know that sometimes it's hard, especially with financial issues. And, sometimes I've talked to artists that have 2 or 3 jobs and they're still pushing themselves to draw every night afterwards. And I think that you got to kind of push yourself to that next level if you really want to become an artist and sustain yourself financially as an artist for a career. Lua Bellas 93 says, I was going to give up on my photography business before even starting it, as over the last year, I didn't have any of my work at all. Then in the last few days, I'm starting to get more and more people talking, wanting to hire me soon. So I've learned to give something a real try before just giving up. Yeah, that's very true. You have to actually try it before realizing if it was a failure or success. And you really have to fully try it. I'm not talking about just like dabble in it, or you do one drawing and then you're like, oh, I guess that didn't work out for me. I guess I'll never do that again. No, you really have to do a few to realize that. So I'm glad that that's working out for you. Okay, one more. Miss Chibi Artist says, I just added hands to the piece I'm working on. I just couldn't keep it handless after that pep talk. Good. Yes. Really put them out in center and make them, you take reference photos of yourself. Almost every hand that I've drawn, I've taken a photo of myself in that position, and, just make it weird and however you want your hand to look. Sometimes they're more sensual and soft. Sometimes they're more brass and like hard. And however you want your hands to be portrayed, just take a reference photo of yourself. We are our own walking reference. Why not as well use it? Okay. Laeth says, Tim, you really are the one who can motivate me the most. Are you a wizard? Man, I wonder. I do not consider myself a wizard, but I do consider myself a witch around Halloween time. Just a little side note. All right, now here's the last one. Pyro Hefner says, no, I meant it in a kind of a good way. I'm always drawing, but constantly getting new ideas. I have to prioritize art ideas. Oh, okay. I apologize then. Yes. I'm the same way. I've told myself the entire year I'm only going to work on swordplay drawings. And then at the con, I get inspired by the people that I'm meeting. There's cosplays that are constantly walking by me. I can't turn off my imagination and my inspiration dial. So instead, I had to get out that drawing. I did one last night. And I said, get it out of my head because it was bothering me. I keep thinking about it. And until I actually draw it, I won't stop thinking about it. So I'm the same way. Okay. I'm going to go ahead and start drawing because I know I've done like 20 minutes of just talking. So why don't we go ahead and switch over here. Thank you guys for listening. Okay. And I will do something probably with the format in the next coming weeks. I know the house, I really like the house, but the comment section below wasn't working, and when it did work, it like really lagged my Photoshop, which was a problem. So instead, we're gonna stick with this for just a couple weeks. And then next week, if you're more into traditional if you're more into traditional drawing, I'm going to do a 4-hour live streams in commemoration of my Kickstarter launch, which will be next Wednesday. I'm really excited for the launch, and that's why I want to do kind of something a little special. And I'll be doing a full character drawing from start to finish. So it'll be a longer stream. I know for some of you that are watching in Europe, that's a little too late as we kind of hit past the midnight point, but for those of you who are interested, that was what will be happening next week. Okay, so let's see here. So in the little preview image, these were the 4 that I kind of had as examples, but just know like these are not the only 4 there are that exist. These are just the 4 that I would say I see the most from artists. And the 4 that we have here, let me grab a green. So we got smooth, which typically is a soft edge brush, something that has a lot of fuzz on the outside of the brush, so something like this. The reason that these are great for blending is because it has that natural gradient from the dark part of the color in the center to more of a light part, and as it fades off, if you add in another color on the edge, you get this natural progression in the middle from one color to the next. Now you might be wondering, why don't we always use this then? If this really is like the best blending solution out there. And that's because sometimes this can look very blurry, and to really create the illusion of form and depth, you need a mix of both smooth and hard edges, which leads us into our second one. So our second one is hard shading. So this is typically with a, well, in this case, I'm using a circle hard edge brush, but any brush that has more of a defined edge, it could be a flat brush, it could be a triangle. The shape doesn't really matter. The idea is that it has an edge to it that is more defined than the soft edge brush. And when you're blending with something like this, you kind of get more of a streaky feel. And that's not to say that's a bad thing. I've seen a lot of artists kind of utilize this in a very creative and original way. So don't immediately think that, oh, I don't want to be doing this hard smoothing because it looks sloppy or unfinished. A lot of the times that's the goal. A lot of artists like more of a painterly feel or more of a sketchy, dynamic feel to it. And oftentimes they'll use more hard brushes because it leaves those streaks and it leaves some of the opacity to it, which gives it more of that feeling. It's been interesting for myself with digital because I feel like I constantly switch between all 4 of these. I still haven't found one that I appreciate the most or that I use the most or like the most, but I definitely like to experiment. And I think that's good with digital art. I wanted to share this with you guys so that maybe you'll start experimenting with different techniques and see what works best for you. So the third one is admittedly probably my favorite if I had to pick, which is a texture blend. And this is usually the chalk brush is probably my most infamous one, but I really like my new one recently. And a texture brush is awesome because it creates the illusion of texture really fast. And if you want to blend from one color to the next, it has that same property as the smooth brush where it has an opacity to it. So it'll give that illusion of a gradient. But the difference is it leaves that hard edge, but it does it in such a scattered, random way that it almost gives a hard impression, but in a very textured manner. So then from here, I would just color pick and lay it out. Now, I'm going to be doing a more in-depth example, so don't think this is my example of each, just so that you guys can see how each works. So this is the texture one. I love the texture blend. It's my favorite, and I think that's the one that I'm going to be experimenting with more this year as I get kind of back into the digital art realm. I feel like I've been away for so long. And then the last one is a transition. Now what this essentially is this can be traced back to like impressionism or pointillism. These are blending techniques where you kind of let the brush stroke be very solid, but you give or you leave some of the brush strokes in between to create the illusion of a transition. But essentially, it's just from one solid to the next with solids in between. But since they're mixed together, it creates this illusion of a gradient. You see this in pixel art where it's very solid opacity. There is no opacity. It's very solid. And it creates this kind of an illusion. Now, you see this often, well, obviously in pixel art, but anything that uses hard shading, and I think pixel art would actually be the best example of it. I'm trying to think of another good example. Artists that use very little opacity and they just kind of brush stroke on their paint, that would be another example of a transition blend style. So I'm going to go ahead, let's erase that. I'm going to shrink those. So just as a quick demo before we get started on our hand, I'm going to go ahead and showcase each. So I'm going to do it on a sphere. I think it's like the best basic shape to do an example like this on, just because it's a blending. You're almost forced to create a gradient. So let's go ahead and do that. So the first one, I'm going to mask out. We're going to do a soft blend. We're going to choose yellow as our, actually we'll do cyan because red and cyan are complements. Okay, so with the soft edge brush, this will become very easy. I thank you, Chio, for following. So, well, I thank you, I'm images with a Z underscore art. I think that's how you pronounce it, for following. All right, so with the soft edge brush, essentially, you just have to like push very lightly and it'll create a very natural gradient. So as I push on where I think the light source would be, you can see how immediately we get the illusion of a sphere. I barely had to do anything, and we already have a pretty deep illusion of our 3D sphere here. Oh, you know what? I forgot to put the hashtags in the title again. I keep doing that. I need one of you guys to like be my extra reminder if you don't see those. Okay. Oh, we got a lot of comments. I'm sorry. I've been distracted. Let me get a couple of these in. Well, first, let me just finish this off. And you can see how I made the brush size really big to do a first kind of layout, and that creates a very heavy blue transition into that red. But as I get maybe lighter and I want to go for a lighter cyan, I'll have more of a concentrated size brush, and I'll lay that down. And maybe I'll get really small. It's like a little highlight or something. Something like that. So this is probably one of the easiest ways to create a transition, especially when doing shapes. I love using the soft edge brush. It was something that I used almost primarily when I first started college, and it took me a while to realize that it works really well at creating these transitions, but unless if you have these hard edges to complement them, they kind of can fall flat. So be careful with the way that you're using a soft edge brush and make sure that you have a mix of both. All right, let's see if we have a question here. Oh, we got a lot. Faithful says, I think sometimes they say they don't have enough time for certain things to draw because they are focusing so hard on other aspects of their art and physically can't draw more. But yes, normally that's not the case. That's true too. And then, don't forget to stretch. I got into some trouble with my wrist and my forearm last year, and I just, did my daily stretches, and now I'm feeling better. Lamporia says, I'm more of a traditional artist, and I keep trying digital, but it's not working out, but I am forever pushing myself to keep trying it. I feel very similar on certain days, and I definitely feel like my traditional is stronger than my digital, but I'm doing what I can to really push myself and become a better digital artist. Doorbell. Hold on. Let me go see what that is really quick, because I think all my roommates are gone. Oh my gosh, guys. That's the first time that's ever happened to me. I had a meat truck come to the Von house. Oh man, and they were like, "I know you like steak, don't you?" And I'm like, "I'm a vegetarian." And they were like, "Ah, but you like seafood, right?" And I was like, "No, I can't eat that either." And they're like, "Well, I know sometimes vegetarians say they can't eat chicken, but do you like chicken maybe?" And I was like, "No, I really can't eat that." And they're like, "Oh, okay, never mind then. Have a good day." Whew, that was an interesting conversation for the day. All right, let's see here. Maple Leaf Bunny says, recently I've been offered a job to draw the website's mascot. I have no idea how I should price each piece. Do you have any advice? Oh man, I feel like I could do an entire stream on pricing your art and how to see yourself in financial value. But essentially, don't undersell yourself. Make sure you're open in the communication at all times with your employer and make sure that it's never fuzzy on what you're getting paid for. So it's either per hour or per project. Make sure you figure out which one you like to do. And just make sure that you feel like you're satisfied with the payment you're getting for the work that you're doing. Eve says, just real quick, did you get my email, Tim? I'm always worried my messages don't arrive. If you did, I haven't checked my email. I haven't checked it in about a week, admittedly. I think just because I've been so busy with the convention and my Kickstarter starting soon, but I will definitely check on that. I know I still have to do your portfolio, so don't worry, I haven't forgot you. Toby Fox says, my digital painting professor recommended some brushes called Groot brushes. They're a plugin for Photoshop that act like traditional paints with dynamic texture and build up. I wondered, have you ever heard or used them? No, I have used traditional paint brushes in Photoshop before, but none of them seem to work the way I wanted them to. But I will definitely do more research on that one if you feel like they work well. Uh, Copper Ladybird says, have you already mentioned where to submit things for critiquing? Not yet. I don't have a post out for it, but it'll probably be somewhere in February, and I'll have its own little post that I will have below, and I will let you know where and when to post that. Faithful says, will you talk about lasso gradient techniques? Not today, but that is a great way of blending. I'm going through more of a fundamental look at blending today, but that is definitely a little more of an intermediate technique that I use often too. Blue1117 says, you need a Twitch moderator. I had one, and for a while I thought I needed one, but I actually kind of like doing the stream solo. And if I did bring on a moderator, it would probably be Sean, who is moving in next month. I think him and I vibe really well in terms of doing a stream like this together, but we'll see. You never know how things at CG Cookie will go. Leo Zahel says, I do stretches every day, especially because I draw, because that makes drawing easier as well. It's very true. You want to stretch and make sure that you're taking care of your arm, especially since you're probably drawing with it constantly, and you want to make sure that you're able to continue drawing constantly. Okay, let's keep moving on here. So this was a soft edge brush blending technique. Let's move on to a hard edge brushing technique. Actually, I'll just make copies of that. All right, so that was soft. So let's do a hard demonstration. Now with this is how I used to pretty much paint all the time. And I liked having the streaky feel and how in some areas you could just leave it and it would be more impressionistic. So I'm going to grab that cyan again. So essentially you kind of like plop it down and then you just start blending it out. And then you use your Alt tool, which is your eyedropper, which picks up the color. And then you just keep blending it. So wherever it looks kind of hard, you keep blending it. Now, you know what? I have my brush setting. I'm going to change it really quick for this demonstration. Mine's more on soft. I want it more on firm. That way I have to push down a little harder to get more of those gradients. Because otherwise, if my pen just touches the tablet, it like lays it out. Now, you might be wondering, well, why would anyone take the time to do it this way when the soft edge way did it like within a second or two? And that's because you don't get then this textured look onto the ball, or this very paint strokey, I should say, look to the ball, the sphere. And depending on the way that you paint it or the direction that you do it in, you can kind of create a cool impressionistic almost style with the way that you're blending with this brush. So you can see I'm wrapping it around the sphere. And yeah, it does take a little longer, but I actually like having some of the brush strokes seen. I think it adds a bit more of a personal touch, more of an artist touch, where the top one just feels like a 3D render almost, or it feels very cold, where the bottom one feels more personal in some way. So something like that. So this would be a hard shell way of painting with this technique. Okay, we're going to move on to the third one, and I'll answer questions in just a second. So I want to make sure we keep moving on here. So I want to at least hopefully try to get like a good hour's worth on the hand, just because I really like drawing skin, but I need the proper amount of time if I really want to include a bunch of different colors and make it look nice. Okay, so the third way of shading, which I mentioned earlier, is my favorite. Oops. There we go. Is a texture blend. I'm going to use my new texture brush that I've been experimenting with recently. I'm going to grab that cyan again. I'm going to lay it on the sphere. Now when you do this, I'm still doing it in the same manner as a soft edge brush, and I'm laying it heavier where the light source would be from. And then as we get more toward the edge, it becomes a little softer. I'm going to do the same thing where I pick up the color. We'll kind of lay it back on there. Now this is one of the other techniques that kind of takes a little longer, but you can see it doesn't take as long as the hard edge brush, and that's because the texture allows for some natural gradient to peek through. You don't have to be as worried about the brush strokes being seen because the brush stroke, regardless of how refined or how small you get, will always be seen because it has that textured edge. Like that. So I mean, you can keep working this. The thing that might look a little weird is it's on a perfectly shaped sphere. So usually when I'm working with something that's more textured, what I'll do instead is create more of a textured edge on the outside to kind of match the rendering style on the inside. So let me show you what that would look like. Let's create a nice sphere. I'm going to layer lock it in just a second, which is the first lock. I'm pretty sure it's opacity lock. Lock transparent pixels is what it's called. So I'm going to choose that. And now when I choose my cyan, it kind of creates a mask for its own layer. So then when I start painting on the cyan, I can't go outside of what I've already laid out with the red. Something like that. So you can see how that it just feels more natural when you have more of a textured edge with the textured blending and rendering technique. I think it just fits better. But I mean, everyone has their own style. I think for me, I like having more this type of an effect, but I like to pair it with a little harder and tighter edges, but still has somewhat of a texture feel. So that's the way I would probably go about doing textured. And then the very last one, which is one that I'm not actually as familiar with, is a transition blend. So essentially, let me grab, I'm trying to think of what brush would be best for this. Let's actually do the chalk brush. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to lay this out pretty thick. And then we're kind of going to be doing like some cross hatching. And as we get away from the blue, or that center, just become more space in between each brush stroke. Now this one I might have to give it a few tries just because I never do this technique, so it's a little foreign to me. And you want to be very confident and bold with your brush strokes on this one. Which, if you see me paint, I'm usually more subtle and I like to have gradual build up. And this is definitely more impressionistic than even the one over there, the hard edge technique, just because you really are pushing and letting those brush strokes be seen. And you're kind of like declaring that this area is this color. Now this obviously creates a lot of texture. It creates a lot of very, what's a good way to describe this? I'd say very bold transitions. And you don't see too many artists do this technique, I think just because of how confident you really got to be with your brushstrokes. And I think with artists, we sometimes tend to stick with more of a soft transition rather than a hard. But whenever you see something like this, it leaves a lasting impression, I would say. So something like that. So this would be more of a transition blend. And you can definitely see the difference between a hard edge brush and just leaving the brush stroke almost entirely there. So that would be the difference between the two. All right, let's see. I'll do a few questions here. CMH39 says, I've been doing digital since 2015 and I feel like it's been going okay, but I think that my traditional is suffering. Yeah, I think if you really put a lot of your time and effort in one, the other can kind of slide a little bit. So that's why you really should be going back and forth. And I think for a while I was doing almost all traditional, so that's why my digital kind of fell behind. So now I'm like picking up the pieces to get my digital back up to where I feel comfortable as I do with my traditional. Chicken isn't vegan, apparently. Copper says, does Sean have a thing on the fridge? I forgot. No, he does not. That way. Maybe he will once he moves in. He said he's literally going to just sit on top of my fridge. That way he made it on my fridge. Well, thank you guys. I am not says, what's a Sean? You will meet him next month. He's moving in like mid-February. J-Mail says, contest. I will give the hint of our next contest coming out at the very end of the stream, so you got to wait a little longer. Tigil says, he's probably locked up in the Von dungeon for trying to put his art on the fridge. Yeah, he's got to earn that spot. CG Rifters with a Z says, I just learned that I was trying to create the look of the first technique by doing the second. I feel better now. Well, good. I'm glad that this may kind of help you sort out which technique you're doing, which one you haven't done yet, and maybe you should try. And that way you can just improve as an artist. So whatever happened to Joe? So essentially, he is now a full-time freelance artist. He still lives in Waukesha, but he no longer lives in Von House. And it was interesting kind of doing the streams back on my own, but I do like it. I do agree, though, that there's a lot of time spent answering or like reading the questions and then going back to the drawing. So I think that was the one perk about having a moderator with these streams. So who knows? Maybe in the future I'll get another one. Blue1117 says, that hard transition blend looks like an awesome alien planet. Oh yeah, that kind of does. I could see that. Sleepy Kawaii Mango says, do you ever use the mixer brush? I do. I guess I could explain what that is on the stream. I wasn't going to, but you know what? I will, just so that those curious can see what that looks like. So thank you for pointing that out. So this is a technique that I've only learned in the past year or two. And essentially, you have a brush tool, but you also have a mixer brush tool. Now, this is under the brush setting on the very left, the brush setting tool, I should say, or the brush tool in the tools menu on the left side. And if you hover over it, you get a mixing brush tool. So what does the mixing brush tool do exactly? Well, starting off, you want to make sure that you have either sample all layers turned on or off, depending on if you want to blend just the layer you're working on or all the layers in the file. So for me, I'm going to do sample all layers. Why, thank you, Cleo55555 for following. So the mixer brush, let me change it to more of a painterly looking brush. So essentially, if we look at our transition sphere here, let me just put on our mixer brush and push down kind of hard. Essentially what you're doing is you're smudging together the colors, but in a way that is defined by whatever brush you choose. So since I chose more of a textured brush, it's blending the colors in more of a textured way. So you can see that the transition and effect you can get. I really like this because you can also like push outside of the edge and then it pulls from like that white and you can bring it back in. It creates more of like a realistic oil painting or more of a traditional feel, I should say, just in general. So oftentimes I'll use this and I'll do like kind of big brush strokes going either in or out of whatever I'm working on because I like the end result of that image. But you gotta be careful because if I am blending with the background layer, there's no longer an edge. It's now incorporating that white. So now let's say you wanted to paint under it, just to give you guys a better idea. Oops, not with the paint, not with that brush though. You can see how we incorporated some of that white, so now it's blended into that layer. So you want to be careful with how you use the mixer brush and have it be specifically for mixing every color on every layer. Because if you don't want the background layer mixed, make sure you have that check mark at the very top on sample all layers. You check that off. All right, so that's the mixer brush. I really like using it. I feel like though it's a little more complicated than just using a brush tool. So I feel like that could be a whole tutorial, which maybe I will actually explore because I'm doing more of a fundamental, or I'm trying to get into more of a creating more fundamental tutorials. So for anyone that's kind of new to digital art, I feel like the ones that I have on cgcookie.com right now, they jump really fast, and I've gotten feedback that I need to break it down even further and really simplify it. So I think having a mixer brush have its own tutorial might be the best fit for that. Okay, so now let's see. Unless if there's any other blend styles that you guys want to see, I'm going to move on to the hand. But let me see if I can pick up some questions here while we're waiting. Oh, I thank you, CG Rifters, for subscribing. You get a fridge from me. Faithful says that this artist does that last blending mode a bit. Let me see what example you got. Almost. Hold on. Let me. So when I'm thinking of the transition brush, I'm definitely thinking very much like this. It's very impressionistic. It creates the illusion of form through these very bold shape and color. So think more like Vincent van Gogh or Monet or any of the artists that use very bold brushstrokes to create their paintings. And it's difficult. If you've ever tried doing something like this, you might learn very quickly that it's tough because you're not supposed to blend it as much. Well, of course, Starry Night's probably one of the most famous ones, but you're supposed to let those strokes be seen and have those colors be very bold and vivid. I would say Impressionist. Oh, actually, this is another, probably one of the famous ones. That's by Monet as well. I would say it's a technique that I haven't explored enough, but I'm always very intrigued by it. And I see other artists whenever I see an artist do it, I immediately get very inspired just because I can see their confidence in their brush strokes. Oh, and the other reason I didn't want to use the mixer brush too much is because of what Terminal Glow said, and that's not every software has the mixer brush, so I don't want to use something that is software specific. I try to make all the tutorials and live streams very software agnostic, or I would say free of any limitations that maybe Photoshop has that other softwares don't. And I think the mixer brush might be one of those because I don't think GIMP has it Paint Tool Sai, I don't think has it. I know Corel Painter does. Those are all the ones I know off the top of my head, but yeah, I guess I try to avoid Photoshop specific, but I think Mixer Brush is one of those that I should do just because I know a lot of people use Photoshop. Okay, Beast.2 says Steve Penley paints like that. He's one of my biggest inspirations. I'd have to look him up. And then Kratos SVC says Cynics uses that blending technique. Oh, trust me, I know. Cynics, I honestly, every time I see his art, I'm so blown away. Like, I'm immediately read confidence in every brushstroke he does. I watch his live streams. I'm a big fan. I just think he has a very powerful sense of his brushstrokes. It's something that I feel like I can't do. And you know how they say artists are always inspired by art that they cannot do. I feel like Cynics' art is it's always inspiring for me because I feel like I cannot achieve that because I'm so soft and I'm so delicate with the way that I frame and shade and render. And I love his technique. So if you don't know who he is, go check out his DeviantArt. There's a link. Kratos posted it. I think it's wonderful. Kratos says, I mean that hard edge last blending mode. Yeah, he does. And I think Cynics has a very deep understanding of lighting. And I think that's why his paintings always look so good, is because he uses that knowledge to his advantage. And when he paints, he creates these forms and he uses colors that really reflect and depend on the light source that he's using. And he does it very intelligently. I'm definitely a fan. I know I sound like maybe I'm fanboying a bit, but I really appreciate his style, and I think his work is something that you guys should check out. Okay, so let's see. We have about an hour left, which is exactly where I wanted to be for the hand. I'm going to put these example spheres in a folder. I'm going to move them aside, actually. Let's put them here. Let's go ahead and start working on our hand. Now, hands I've only recently become kind of falling in love with drawing, and I haven't painted them as much, so this might be a little more experimental, but I mean, I've painted enough hands where I can kind of get the gist. I would say I like traditionally drawing hands more, so I can play with more of the values and shadows and highlights that traditional graphite grayscale drawings can achieve. So with digital, I think I want to have some fun with it. We'll see what direction we take, but with an hour, I feel like we can get away with experimenting a little bit. And if we don't like it, we'll just paint over. And let's see if we have any more questions before I get started on the hand. Kratos says he's amazing. I agree. CG Rifter Z says you aren't allowed to say I can't do that. You are putting a limitation on yourself. Smiley robot. You're right. You get fridges from me for realizing I just am not following my own rules that I set for you guys. So you're right. I do try Cynics' technique. I know that I fail, but like I said earlier, I love failure. I think it makes artists better. So it's just something that I got to try more. Miss GB Artist says, I really like Marco Bushi for a textured look. He has a traditional background and his digital really reflects that. Here's a piece. Let me see what he's got. Oh, yeah. Yeah, that's wonderful. He has like a rainbow spectrum in there. But yeah, it's very similar. It creates a very traditional feel, and I think that's great for digital. CMH39 says he's live now. Well, I can't watch him, but he goes live often, actually. And I think if you guys are on Twitch a lot, I think he's someone that you should subscribe to. Okay, let's go ahead. The hand has its own line art layer. I'm going to name it. I'm going to work underneath. And what are these color palettes on the side, you might ask? So I took a reference picture of my hand this morning. That's what I sketched this from. And these were the colors that I color picked from the actual image. Now, you can see that they don't have a lot of life in them. I think it's because I took the picture in this room. My hand didn't have a lot of interesting colors to create a interesting palette from. So I pulled from some other palettes. This one was a Norman Rockwell skin study. I really like that one. And then these are colors that I've worked with in the past for skin. And I think it's important to show you guys that when you work on skin, don't just grab a peach. If you're working on like a more of a Caucasian color, Don't just rely on peach. Actually, I'm going to show you what not to do. So let's go ahead. I'm going to fill this in really quick. Magic wand tool, the outside. Select inverse. Fill it in. Telling you that magic wand tool is something you guys should become acquainted with fast. Deselect, magic wand in between the two fingers, delete, unselect. Okay. So this would essentially be our foundation. What I don't want you to do is grab the skin color, go to your color picker, go closer to white, and use that for your highlights essentially. So you like lay it on. Let me go a little thicker. There we go. And then for your shadows, grab the skin color. Oops. Grab the skin color and go more towards black. And then you just edge it out. So I'm making it known now. This is what I want you not to do. I actually cringe when I see skin that looks like this. Because skin is so full of color and life, and to see it kind of brought down into just 3 colors. I mean, if there's a style, like if it's more of a flat coloring, then maybe I can understand. But even then, I would recommend trying out a little more life-filled colors than incorporating just black and white. All right, so something like this. I think you guys get the idea. So I never want to see any of you guys do this. No. This is not the right way to do skin. Let me take a sip of water here. I actually have to drink water. I'm doing this teeth whitening thing, and my teeth have become super sensitive, so I can't drink tea for the next 2 weeks, which might be kind of hard for me. Okay. Sleepy Kawaii Mango says guest stream with Cynics. I would love that. You know what? I should reach out to him because I think I would love just to kind of interview him while watching him paint. So that might be a good idea, and have you guys watch him on this stream as well. Sleepy Kawaii Mango says you always talk about Norman Rockwell, but no love for I can't even pronounce that. Leon Decker. Let me check. Ooh. Oh, yeah. So his style is very similar. You know what? Oh, actually, I have seen some of these. You know what? I don't think it's... You're right. I don't think I've given him a fair look through. Thank you for introducing him to me. Yeah, that's great. Oh, I accidentally refreshed the Twitch page. I lost all the comments. I'm sorry, guys. So whoever asked a comment, you might have to repeat it if you did it in the last 2 minutes. Okay. So let's go ahead and undo that. So instead, I'm going to put wrong. So instead, let's go ahead and paint it the way that I think is more free of limitations, and you can explore more color variations. So let's go. So I make a new layer, mask it out. And I guess I'll keep this as my foundation layer. But what I'll do first is, you know what? I'm just going to add a bit of a pink gradient from the fingertips going down. Oftentimes we have blood vessels in our skin, and they're thinner, or the skin is thinner near our fingers and in areas like your elbows or your nose or your cheeks, and that's why it has more of a reddish tint. So usually when I paint hands or fingers, I almost like exaggerate, I embellish the red just so it creates almost a more rich color underneath. I don't want to overdo it. I just kind of like to subtly put it in areas in the palm part. And then like where the creases are, I'll usually go a touch darker. All right. So then from here, let's pull in some yellows. And I think the best way to do stuff like this is not to feel limited or don't feel like there's a proper way to do it. There's no proper way to do art. You just kind of go off of your past experience of what has worked for you, what hasn't, and then just have fun exploring it while still having the fundamental understanding of value and lighting and color, and then place it appropriately. So I think we're going to have the light source kind of overhead. Let me draw a little light source icon. So we'll do it overhead and coming slightly in front. But we're definitely going to get some shadow underneath the fingers. And I don't want you guys to think like this is the way that you have to paint either. This is just the way that I'm painting for today. Sometimes I like to, actually most times I like painting from dark to light. So starting on more of like a neutral foundation is actually a little different for me. But I think it's good to explore different options and just see what kind of results you get. Because you never know when you might find a new rendering technique or a new color palette that you enjoy if you're always using the same, you know? So I'm creating some of those kind of harsher shadows underneath. Because if I'm following kind of that light direction that we're working with, I'll have like the top of the finger be more lit and then the underside of the hand be more in shadow. There's some questions here. Beast.2 says, I'm pretty sure Lennon, Decker, and Rockwell knew each other. Well, I wouldn't be as surprised, I'll just say that. But yeah, I actually really like his work, so I'm surprised I haven't kind of researched him more. So thank you again for showing him to me. Copy Ladybird says, you did my shading thing as an example of what not to do. Unhappy face. Like I said, I think everyone has their own style. So when I say not to, it's just something that I've seen a lot of my own students when I taught do. I think just because they weren't sure on how to add color variation to their hand. So I think having a more diverse palette will definitely add more life and more of a fleshy look to skin, regardless of placement on the body. But hands especially have more of a red and more flesh look. So I think only having white and black as the two colors to incorporate for a light and shadow, I don't think that's ever a good idea. I would actually teach in a way that I would avoid black and white almost altogether. And I would work with more color variation to create those shadows and forms. And I think that will really help heighten the overall quality of your pieces. CMH39 says, when you were blending the hand the wrong way, what was your opacity and flow set to? I always keep mine to 100%. I think just because I'm too stubborn sometimes with my blending where I'll just push a little softer. So instead of using a opacity, or I'll change the opacity down, I work with pushing lighter. Now that's changed in the last couple months. I've been experimenting more with actually lowering the opacity and painting that way. So I don't want to say I have a set way of doing it yet. I will just say it's not, I don't have a very confident approach to how I paint yet. So it's still experimenting. GK Sculpting says, I feel torn between digital and traditional. Should I make a decision which is more important and work on those skills, or should I simply make a schedule when I do which? It's all about balance. I know that we hear that all the time, not only with art, but like in our own lives. But it's so true. And I think with having a good traditional and digital understanding, you really just have to make time for both and do it frequently. I think for the longest time, I had traditional as like my forefront, and I really did put digital to the side. And I think because of that, it suffered. I think I was improving in traditional and I was learning all these new techniques. And then that when I tried to get back to digital, I almost like tried to imply only the traditional techniques, and it just didn't work because digital, as much as you're applying some of the same fundamental understandings, the application and the execution, it definitely is different. So I think you do have to work with both to really grasp an understanding and become just as good in one as you are in the other. So yeah, I would say setting a schedule would help. I try to do at least one digital thing a week and one traditional thing a week and have it be like finished. I would say my digital though, that's where I've been slacking and I'm getting back into it. I was actually working. Oh, you know what? I can show you a little sneak peek. I know that this image has been in like the oven for the past year, but I won't say I'm gonna finish it soon because I don't want to put an expectation on myself that I don't know if I can hit or not. I'll just say I've been exploring it further, and I'm really liking how it's the direction I'm going in now. So we'll see how it looks. But here is the Christina piece. So I was on a call with Moorbacher and a few of my roommates in Puichi, and he was talking to me about changing some of the settings where before it was just her laying on a blue kind of pool, and then I did this little layer blend mode change. I changed it to a lighten layer and created this almost like rose gold aura on the water, and I really like that. And I changed the petals from red to more of a deep goldenrod color, and I really like that because for her being such a sad character, I think being surrounded by these fallen petals of a color of hope and happiness, I think the contrast, it really creates more to the illustration. I like having those subtle, deeper meanings in illustrations. So I like the direction it's going in, but like I said, I don't want to set myself up for a failure, especially if I'm going to say like, oh, this is when I'll have it done. And then if I don't have it done by that time, I don't want to put myself in a position of being let down, because for me, that's a very fun piece to work on. It's relaxing. I enjoy it. So I don't want it to become a chore. And that's why I'll just say I've been working on it and I've been excited with the progress so far. Anyways, let's get back to the hand. So I'm adding some of these lighter values where the light would hit a little stronger. And then on the other side, I'm grabbing these darker kind of brownish red hues and I'm laying those on. Now I think for like on the palm area, some people have this. I know I have it a little, probably more than others. It actually creates more of like a gray appearance. So I'm going to lay that on. Then just like subtly hint at blue for like where the vein. For me, my veins are very close on that kind of palmy part of the thumb area. So I'm going to lay some of that there. Okay, now on the more fleshy, let's lay out some of these darker reds, these oranges, and you know what? I'm actually going to change to my new brush and lay them out. So usually when I'm painting like this, it's like you probably notice that I'm like changing all the time of where I'm working on. And that's because as I think our eye wanders from area to area, we see what we think could be better, what needs to be improved on, and we go for it. And that's definitely how I paint. I'm definitely a very scattered artist. I try not to get too focused on one area and over render an area before moving on to the next. I used to, but I've taught myself over the years to stay back and not detail too soon. It's challenging, especially if you're an artist like me that likes to do rendering and likes to do details, and you're going in very, I would say too soon, and you're wasting time then because you're rendering areas that need a better foundation to sit on before going in and really detailing it out. All right, let's take out our line art and see what we got. Okay, yeah, I like that so far. I think it's a little light. So what I could do, just make a copy of that layer, multiply it, see what it looks like. No, I don't like the way that looks actually. Oh yeah, I want to make a copy of it. It almost becomes like more red and white. I don't know if I like that or not. I'm trying to decide. I think if I erase some of the hand or the fingers, I would like that more. Let's see what that looks like. No, you know what? I don't think I do like that better. So I'm gonna make a new layer on top. Mask it out again. Let's see here. Let's go finger by finger and just do a little more detailing on each and see how that looks and see if we get a result that I feel a little better about. Because right now I'm like, it's all right. But I think the shading needs more lights on the side of the fingers. So like on this side of the finger, I definitely want a little darker. Oh, you know what? I know what's strange. I forgot to change my preferences on my tablet to be more soft instead of firm. That way when I'm pushing, I create kind of a harder brush stroke. So this is one of those things where I was saying earlier how I'm trying to have more of that technique like Cynics where having more of a soft preference, it forces you to be more bold with your brush strokes. Where if you work more with a gradient, you can kind of get away with softly building it up, where I want to get into the habit more of building it up quickly. Because I think sometimes with digital, I am too slow. Admittedly, I am too slow digitally. And I'm working on it. And one of the ways to do it is to force myself to work with a brush and with a preference that doesn't allow me to escape back into those old habits. And I have to work faster. Or I have to work more bold, I guess would be the better way of saying it. So this is a cool area where these two fingers meet. I can really show the difference by having a lighter, let me choose something like that, on the underside because the light source would be hitting that side of the finger more. Something like that. I think the other thing that I need to start doing more too is like letting my brushstrokes be seen on more of a preliminary stage like this, where I think I'm so used to blending everything right away, but I actually enjoy the look of having some of those brushstrokes seen. And I think I'm having the most fun painting when I'm a little more versatile with my brushstrokes. So each finger has a crease. So the way that we're doing it, let me see my video here. Where are we? There we go. Okay, so the top line on the finger, there's usually only one line, where the second line, there's usually two. And that's true for every single finger that we have. So when I'm painting or if I'm ever drawing hands, I always keep in mind that this line is only one, and then the middle one is always two. And then where the fingers connect to the palm, there's usually like a bunch of scattered lines you can see like underneath the finger. So I guess that one varies, and a lot of times they like crisscross. So for that, it's a little different. Let me zoom in so you guys can see this better. Something like this. I'm going to put some of my bounce light having more of a kind of reddish orange look to it. Is that following true realism? Not exactly. Do I like to be a little more liberal with my lighting choices? Yeah, I do. Is that a bad thing? No. Unless if I'm doing like a realism study where I'm really trying to make it look spot on, then yeah, I think you really should follow the fundamentals. And maybe if you're really trying to learn lighting on a different level. But for me, since this is more of like a fun little exercise on painting skin and to show you guys on the stream, I think I'm going to be a little more liberal with my color choices here. So I'm letting these lighter colors come up right against that edge. I still want the lightest kind of where the light would probably be falling on the most, but in between those, I'm letting that edge be lighter. Why, thank you, CP Cartoon Plant, for following. And thank you, Wesley's Alice 3D, for following as well. So on the middle of the palm, try not to have it be such a flat, kind of boring, mundane surface. Try to break it up with some interesting lines, and I mean, we have a bunch of wrinkles on the hand. Might as well incorporate some of those in the painting. And one of the easiest ways to add wrinkles and add some depth to it is whenever you add a line, shade in one direction, and then on the other side, add just like a highlight line or just a touch lighter to imply that the light source is hitting underneath of that wrinkle. So as you can tell, up to this point, I've been working pretty light, I would say. So let's go ahead and pull in some darker values. I thank you, see Yuri 907 for following. Oh, you know what? I didn't. What? Oh, I thank you for everyone that just followed. Thank you. I forgot about the questions here. So Faithful says, "Do you still do master studies? And if so, what do you think the benefits of them are?" I actually do like master studies. I don't usually post them if I do them, but usually, actually recently I did a Norman Rockwell one. I never posted it because for me that was just for me. That was just for me learning. I didn't want to post it as like, here is my master study. Here's what I'm capable of doing, because I think doing master studies are more or less for you learning and learning something new. So when I was doing the Norman Rockwell one, I was really getting back into the digital painting mindset and like looking at how he blends colors and thinking about it as a painter and how I would work with those colors to create texture. Because he worked with a paintbrush, and I am astounded by the way that he was able to get textures with just a paintbrush. So I look at his work and I try to emulate that digitally, and that was one of the things I tried to learn. So when you're doing a master study, don't just do it to like showcase to, you know, your friends or your following that I can recreate this really gorgeous picture because someone already created it. Like the hard part was already essentially done, the creative part. All you're doing is you're being a photocopy machine and you're just reproducing it. So if you're doing a master study, do it for yourself with a learning mentality. So for me, it was more about color and blending. So whenever you're doing a master study for yourself, really look at it and be like, what am I trying to learn from this? And if it's color, really analyze and observe the color that they're working with and how they're utilizing it in their painting. And as you're color picking or however you're doing it for your own study, try to see, oh, okay, here's where they add color. Oh, I guess gray really makes other colors stand out well, and that's why they used it here. Like, be actively and critically thinking while you're doing master studies. Otherwise, I feel like they go to waste, and I feel like they're more of like just show off pieces. So do master studies, but do them critically. Terminal Glow says, maybe try covering the hand with a fully desaturated layer and checking the values. It looks like the values are a little off to me somehow. Yeah, I don't have any dark values right now. So like I'll do that really quick. It's like right now, yeah, it looks like very grayscale, like very middle tone grayscale. I want to add in those darker values, especially in between like the thumb and this finger, the forefinger, and then underneath the thumb area here. I think that will really give it a better punch. Let's see what other questions we got really quick. Drifting Sakura says, do you use flux or anything to help ease strain on the eyes? I get so much eye strain, it's killing my eyesight. I do. These are actually yellow tinted glasses. So you can see, I don't know how well you can see it on the stream, but essentially these glasses help staring at a white screen constantly. So for me, actually, the hand looks a little different when I take them off and on. It definitely looks a little more yellow when I have them on, but it's helped me staring at a screen for however many hours per day that I do this. Lights and Sea says, my problem is I tend to have bigger ideas and start them, but then lose interest several days later. Any tips on keeping the idea alive, even if it takes more than a few days or weeks to finish? I think if you're passionate about the idea, it will get done. I really do believe that you have to really enjoy what you're working on and love the idea. And if it's an idea that you want to get done, it will get done. Oops. Sorry, I'm trying to like talk and do this masking layer. But essentially, whenever I have an idea and I need to get it out of my head, I need to like finish it as soon as possible. So usually things that are like singular pieces, I usually can finish in a night or 2 nights, and I get those out of my brain and onto the paper. For big projects, like for me, it's swordplay. It's it's a mental strain sometimes, and I think that's why it goes on the back burner a lot. But you need to like force yourself to pull it on the front burner and really be the main thing that you're cooking up. Otherwise, it's always going to be the back burner. It's never going to be anything more than a simmer, and you really want to get it done and ready to. I guess if they're preparing a meal, you want to get it ready to serve to the people that are hungrily awaiting. I don't know how many more metaphors I can throw into that sentence there. Okay, so let's start adding shadows on this outside edge. I don't want to add too much because I think sometimes we overdo values as artists to really emphasize like, oh no, this is the shape here and this is the form here. But I'm telling you, subtlety is really key a lot of the times with adding values and stuff like that. All right, so now on this lower part of the hand, there's another area where you can kind of edge it out and create more of a shape here, especially near the top of the wrist where you have that kind of defined line under the palm. Something like that. Actually, I'm going to pull some more reds into these shadow areas here. So I'm going to bring some of those wrinkles up into the lower part of the hand. And it's actually more tight here, at least in the reference that I'm looking at here. Because like I said, I took a picture of my own hand and it wrinkled up a bit more here, where here it's actually, this is more like an egg. So when I think of this part of the hand, I think of rendering like the shell of an egg with like a few wrinkles and hints of detail and texture on top. And every now and then, I'll just grab a different color just to see what it would look like. So I just grabbed yellow, and like intuitively, I'm not sure why I grabbed yellow, but I thought it would be a good mix since I feel like I was only seeing red and blue up until this point. So I was like, you know what, let's throw some yellow in the mix and see what kind of a transition we can get. Because like I said, I think I've gotten to the point in my career where realism, as much as I appreciate it and I think it really helps me, I think it becomes boring if you only work realism in every single piece that you do. I appreciate artists that definitely do it, and I feel like every now and then I'll work more realistically. But when it comes to color, I like exploring other color variations, and I think having more of an open mind with choosing colors and the way that you're shading, I think can lead to more fun end results. Even if they might not be the most realistic, I feel like they can be interpreted and implied in a way that creates a cool end finish. So I don't know. I feel like that it's definitely more of a personal choice, but I definitely know that there's probably a few of you that may agree with me and may disagree. But it all comes down to personal style and what taste you like to see in the art that you view. Blue1117 says, I might have missed your answer if you said it. Oops. Have you done any artwork that implements geometric shapes in the background, like what you do with filigree? Yeah, I've done a few. I want to do more. Actually, this year you'll probably see a lot more like weird shapes in the background. I do enjoy integrating like very bold shape language into pieces because I appreciate when other artists do it. So I'm like, oh man, I should start doing some of that. Sleepy Kawaii Mango says, Gawky shout out Heyo. She is actually at a dentist appointment or a doctor appointment, so she is not here right now. Drifting Sakura says, I can see. I was thinking about getting those glasses. How do you combat with color change? Do you edit the colors afterwards? Yeah, usually I edit the colors afterwards, but every now and then I'll just remember to look up and be like, okay, that's way too yellow, and just mentally know to stop using as much yellow. Why, thank you, O'Brien Shark, for following. O'Brien Shark. Sounds like you're drowning in the water. I'm like, O'Brien Shark. I don't know if that's the origin of your name. I'm sure it's not. So like on this part of the hand, I can go ahead and add some more highlight too, just to give it a bit more of a form. Then like I said, that bottom crease will have 2 instead of 1. But the top one will have 2, or just 1. So I'm gonna push that one forward here. Something like that. Why, thank you, Phantom Chocolate, for following. The chocolate that can't be found. Yeah, I like the way that that's looking. I think I might bring this color more out to the edge. Sometimes I'm a fan of such bold color changes depending on the light source, but I think having a more subtle one up here would actually do better. Let's pull in some of that gray. Actually, gray is one of my favorite colors to incorporate in a piece because they make the other colors around it kind of stand out more. So I like adding little hints of gray in all my digital pieces. Yeah, that crease is a little too big. And then after we get to a point where I feel kind of solid about the foundation here, I'll go in and start really rendering it out and detailing it. Because I know we have about a half hour left, so I think I can get some good progress on it in that half hour. Oops. So we got a pretty bold crease here. So this is where I actually might pull in the mixer brush. I don't know why it's giving me that really weird. Oh, I see. Okay. There we go. All right, so now I'm going to start to blend some of these areas around with our mixer brush. And then from there, I'll go ahead and really start doing some of the detailing. You know what? I'll make a copy, or actually it's on its own layer. So I'll show you after I'm done mixing, because sometimes actually during the process, it's hard to see what exactly is happening. But then at the end, it becomes very apparent. Oh, and you know what? There should be more of a shadow here. It's kind of like falling on the hand. Same with this one. While I'm mixing all of this, did anyone see the Nintendo Switch announcement? I'm a huge Mario Kart fan. Like that's probably the only game I think I can kind of say that I think I'm good at. And I've loved pretty much every Mario Kart made. And Double Dash was definitely my jam. But I was excited for the announcement. I was hoping it would be Mario Kart 9, so I was kind of a little let down when it was just like a battle mode addition to Mario Kart 8. But I will say some of the other games are looking great. I think having kind of the revisited Sonic with the old look, I think that's brilliant. I think they should have done this long ago. I loved Bomberman back in the day, so seeing that come back to life was also refreshing. And I know most people, I would say, are excited about the Zelda announcement and the trailer that they released with that. Yeah, some of these edges just need to be cleaned up. Yeah, something like that. Let's keep mixing here. See what you guys say. Luabella93 says, for my dyslexia, I have navy tinted glasses and always have to remember to take them off before painting. It's pretty obvious why. Yeah, tinted glasses definitely would leave an impression on the colors that you're choosing. Sweet Rose Breyer says, out of curiosity, have you taken Japanese classes? Your pronunciation is very good. Skochi. I would say I know I can read and write hiragana and katakana. At least I used to be very good at it. And then I only know a couple kanji. So I did teach myself a little bit Japanese, but I can only speak just a very little bit of it. I think right now my new goal is to learn French. I think that's the language that I loved the sound of French. I think it's the most romantic sounding language. And my friends kind of pick fun at me sometimes because I have kind of a slur to the way I talk. It like slurs together. It's considered a northern accent. And I think French is a very elegant and beautiful slur because everything just kind of rolls together and it creates this very fluid talk. So whenever I hear them talk about like enchanté or voulez-vous, it just sounds very elegant and I like it. And plus, I obviously want to visit Paris and explore France a bit. So I think giving it a try and, really, give a chance at trying the language before I go over there, I think it's just respectful to the culture. CG Rifter says, can you give us a Waluigi impression? No. I am the worst at impressions. You don't want to hear me try to give impressions. But I will say, I do like Waluigi. His first appearance was in Mario Tennis on the N64, and I really liked him. I actually like him more than Wario, I would have to say. Tigel says, Mario Kart was so much fun on the Wii, and I play it against my friends online all the time, but then they disabled the multiplayer properties because the Wii U was coming out. So now I can't race against my friends anymore, sad face. Oh, that is sad. I mean, there's always Mario Kart 8, and you can play online with that game. Angie Valda, hello Angie, says, Papa Van, now that you've learned a little Japanese, I want to learn French and love you even more because I can relate. I really want to go to Paris and Japan, especially Japan for fan merchandise. Yeah, and what's funny actually is my number one place to visit in the world is actually Iceland. Probably Reykjavik. I know I'm probably saying that wrong. But from what I've seen, I just think it looks so gorgeous. And I would really love to get out there. And so I was like, you know what, Tim? You should try learning the language. No, I cannot. That was an impossible feat for me. I could barely do the basics of like, hello, goodbye, where am I, how did I get there? I barely could get through that. And I just realized you have to learn when, you've been defeated. And that was that was a defeat for me. Where French, I feel like, has been very fluid. I feel like I can say very basic things like what would be voulez-vous aller manger avec moi ce soir, or things like that, where it just feels more natural. Where Japanese, I have to think about what I'm saying, and it wouldn't come out natural. Like you have to reverse the way that you say it. So instead of like I want to go eat, it would be eat want, because there is no I. I mean, you could say I, but they usually don't say I in Japanese. So it's a very different language, different way of thinking. But with French, I think since it's so similar to English in a lot of the way it's talked and the grammar of it, that it comes very natural. And I think probably Spanish is similar. I actually know un poco, yeah, yo español, un poco español. But that's what I grew up with high school. And I wish I would have, I don't know, embraced it more back in high school. I feel like it was just so difficult for me at the time that I just threw it to the side as like I don't really have to understand or learn this. And it's unfortunate because I really wish I would be more bilingual than I am now. Like I know a little Spanish, but I feel like it's bare minimum where I can't even say that I know Spanish. And Angie, I cannot see your Instagram post. I know you tagged me and Key with some stickers that you made that you want to send to the fridge, but I actually cannot see your Instagram at all. So we have to figure that out because I really want to see the stickers on my own phone. I mean, Key showed me, so I was like, that's awesome. So thank you for making those. And if you send them here, I will gladly put them right there on the fridge. Okay. And then Sleepy Kwaimingo says, Katagana, Tim? No. Kata. Hold on. Let me make sure I'm saying this right. No, it's katakana. Yeah. This. Katakana, not katagana. So basically, Japanese have two alphabets, essentially, and a whole lot of kanji. So, like, I know the alphabets, but the kanji is like a whole nother beast that if you really want to speak Japanese or write and read it, I mean, you really have to dedicate yourself to memorizing kanji. Why, thank you, Board Queen, for following. Okay, so I feel like I'm at a point with the hand where let's go ahead and, so let's see, we have like 15 minutes left of the stream. Or you know what? No, I'll detail a little further before we get into kind of like the final touches. And I know one of the stream that you guys requested on, and if you have a stream request, please put it below. I have a link on the streams to request, and I actually do look at that. And like today was one of the ones where I was like, oh, that'd be a great topic for us to cover today. So don't feel like it would just be a waste of your time to post it, because I actually do look at it. And one of them was actually rendering a piece like near the end. And I think so often on these streams, I start from the very beginning, and with only 2 hours, I can't really give it the full attention that I do with my other pieces. So I'm going to eventually work up a piece where it just needs like another hour or two of rendering time, and then I can call it done. And I'll show you guys that process, because I know that is probably a little more probably helpful for those of you that kind of know the fundamentals but want to take it to that next step, and like, how do I finish off the piece? So I'm definitely looking forward to doing that one. All right, so I just created a multiply layer. I'm going to just give my shadows a little more oomph to them. And then I think I'm going to edge out some of these areas too. Now, I know I talked recently on how one of my goals was not to use overlay or multiply as much, but I think with a tool like multiply, if you're using it in a way that I feel fits what you're working on, or it's enhancing sorry, if it's enhancing the piece, then I think using it is smart, because these are tools that are meant to be used at your disposal as an artist. I think it's when you start using them as crutches is where you kind of fall into trouble. So I would say up until this point, I feel pretty confident in the foundation we created. Well, thank you, Damien Kaz, or Damami Kaz. Oh, I butchered that one. I'm sorry. I feel like in this case, though, I created a foundation that can now be used with a multiply layer, and I wouldn't feel like it's cheating or relying on it too much, because I already created a lot of the fundamental work. Because I noticed that when I digitally paint, I tend to work a little lighter, a little more toward the neutrals, and then neutrals and up, I would say, on the value scale. I tend not to get that dark. So usually when I finish a piece is when I start to edit it and really enhance the shadows. So I think that's something I'll have to work on throughout the year and throughout my life. But I just notice whenever I want something to have a little more contrast, that's when I start to pull out the multiply like I'm doing now and kind of add it on that way. I'll create a new layer. Let me blend some of this together here. Like that. And let's go ahead. You know what? I'm going to get a little smaller with my brush. Up until this point, I've been working with a rather large size brush, or at least larger than what you should be working with when you're going into the detailing. So I'm doing more of like a detailing part. I'm going to make my brush size smaller, and without zooming in, I'm going to try to get some of these more defined wrinkles and details that will make the painting kind of pop more. I'm really giving more of that highlight attention to the very fingertip. Like that. When working on something like a form, such as fingers, try to push the direction of your brushstrokes in whatever direction the form is going in. So like with fingers, we're working with a lot of cylinder shapes. So work with that cylinder and kind of wrap the brushstrokes that you're doing around that shape. Well, I thank you, Techman128, for following. So I'm bringing some of the light in between those knuckle areas. And at the very end, we'll definitely do some color manipulation and push it out just a touch further. So I'm glad that I'm doing more of like an experimental painting process today with you guys, just so you guys can see like it's not always the same when I paint, and I think it's good to try new techniques and rendering styles because otherwise your stuff starts to blend together and you're not really learning anything new. And I definitely get caught in that myself a lot where I'm kind of just repeating the same process over and over. So working with something even like this where the brush strokes are more prominent, it forces me to think in a new way. And whenever you're kind of breaking that autopilot, that's usually when you're kind of exploring new territories, and from that you're learning. We're gonna pull some yellows into the palm here. Tishel says, "Great job on that hand. You could almost say it's a great." I don't know what the pun is there. No, too far. Okay, I'll leave. Oh, I think I know what you're trying to say. No, I wouldn't say you pushed it too far. Tishel says, "I'm so sorry. It's okay." I feel like I would have got a lot more hand puns from you guys today. I feel like this stream is kind of lending itself towards it. I feel like I gave you a helping hand in doing some puns here. I don't know if you guys can like squeak some in before the stream comes to a close here. Okay. And you know what? You know where like calluses are usually built up? I'll just give a little orange color for there. Just because. Because why not, right? Okay, I would say we're definitely getting to a place where I could definitely get way more impressionistic with my color choices. Like having some of this orange on the shadow color. Which, mind you, I really like, so I could see myself exploring that further. But I think for the stream's sake, I'll keep it a little more tone. So you can see how having these mixtures of a bunch of different colors creates a way more realistic hand than something like this. Where's the initial one? Yeah, so you can see how with this, it just feels very lifeless when compared to something like this. It has more vibrancy, there's more color, more depth, and I like having that color play. And heck, if you even want to get a little weird with it, you can. Just as long as the colors that you're placing have some kind of a purpose. So like if I added, let's say this blue color, let's have this maybe down here. And that's because I'm trying to balance out how warm it is on the top of the hand. So maybe having a cooler part on the bottom. Maybe I'll take my eraser and blend it out a bit better. But it could create this cool, interesting dynamic between warm and cool colors where, yeah, it might not be on the realistic side, but now you're thinking like a painter in how the impression that you're putting on the hand is caught with the viewer, it leaves more of a dynamic composition. And yeah, you might be leaving realism a bit, but now you're entering a territory of exploring uh, color and variation in the impression that color leaves with the viewer rather than just pure realism. Plus, I like when artists start to explore with other colors on realism. I think it creates just a more interesting piece overall. So I would encourage you guys to at least try it. And if it's not your thing, it's not your thing. But I think it's good to at least, try it out and see like, oh, maybe I do like this, or maybe you'll learn something that you normally don't try when pulling in these kind of color combinations. Oh, you know what? Something I should have been doing more is flipping my image just so I can see what it looks like from the other side. Oh, you know what? I actually like it from this side better. Yeah, something like that, right? I will say the wrinkle in the middle of the hand is kind of distracting. Yeah, there we go. Okay, so what were those final steps that we were talking about before? I'm going to go ahead and make a copy of our hand. Oops. So I'm going to put all of those layers into a folder, copy the folder, merge the folder into one layer. So now it's all in one layer. Let's go ahead and do some color editing. So I'm going to go to Image, Adjustments, and Color Balance. Now, usually I save this for where I'm more kind of like finished with a piece. But since this is a live stream, I would say the hand could use a little more rendering. But for the sake of this live stream and finishing on time, let's go ahead and just do it now. So color balancing, you can see how it will greatly affect. Oh, wow, that looks like dead. This looks like a corpse or like someone that's drowned underwater. Wow, I actually really like that. I mean, not the whole corpsey drowned underwater part, but I like that color combination. Wow, I might actually stick with something like that. Oh, now it's looking really corpsey. That's very interesting. Wow, yeah, it's like I went into the color balance kind of having an idea of what it would look like, but I think it surprised me with the results. Wow, look at that. Let me do a side by side. Let me hide the spheres here. I mean, look at the difference between the two. Thank you, Scoobs with a Z for following. I mean, there is just such a difference in that color. I don't even know which one I like better, actually. Like the left one feels very warm and in the sun, but the right one almost feels like on a cloudy day or like hailing for a taxi cab, like in a windy city. There's an interesting vibe there with colors that I wouldn't normally use for skin. I mean, this is such like a I mean, let me pull the palette up here just to give you an idea of what colors we're working with on this thing. Like when you see this color palette, do you think hand? Not so much. Like I think that's why I really like working with the color sliders at the very end, because then you get to see how your if your values work. Because if your values don't work, then the color adjustments won't work as well. It'll look very wonky. Well, I think you one more game. There's the puns I've been looking for. Thank you. So yeah, this is really interesting. I like the way that looks. And you know what? I might not even do too much more to it. Let me see what a vibrance adjustment will do. Yeah, not. Oh, actually. Oh, I like that too. See, like I'm learning new things with you guys right now today too. I really like the look of this hand. I don't know if it's just because it's so unlike what I'm used to doing. Yeah, just like that color combination of like the warm shadows under the fingers, but then this really weird blue color to balance out the fingers. It's very interesting. So yeah, always explore with your art. I think the only thing that would hurt you is if you don't explore your art. So let's see here. We're coming to a close here. Let me see if there's any last minute questions, and then we're gonna cut this one off. Yes, I like the blue too, guys. Yeah. Kiko Ska says the thumb is a bit too pointy. Yeah, the thumb does look a little too pointy. I think I have a very pointy thumb. Let me show you the reference that I'm working off of. So that was the hand that I was drawing today. But yeah, I agree. The way I painted it is a bit too pointy. Some of the proportions are a bit off. I should have maybe done like an outline off the reference. CG Rifters with the Z says, you've shown us a handful of techniques. There we go. Now we're getting some here. Oh, now I'm reading all the hand puns. Kratos said, flip the blue one. Yeah, let me look what it looks like on the other side. Huh. That's just super interesting. I really like that hand, and I can't place my finger on why. But I like it. Angie Valda says, make the hand shake hands. Yeah, I could do that. Or do we leave it like the famous Adam and God painting where they're like just out of reach of each other? Like that. Right? CMH39 says, I like the one with 100% cyan and 50% blue. Yeah, I'm very curious about it. I think I might play with it later tonight and just see why I like it, and maybe if I could recreate that in another piece. Because once you kind of find something out with an experiment like this, really explore why you like it. Because right now, this is very new to me. I like the color combination. I got to figure out what about it sparks that initial attraction to it, and then work with it. Copper Ladybird says, shake the hands. Yep. Pyro Heifer says, the blue looks really cool. Accidental pun, more fine arty, I think. Yeah, I agree. It looks more fine arty. Maybe that's why I like it. It's just so different. Miss Chibi Artist says, the stream has been very handy. Wink, robot face. There we go. I knew you guys had some good hand puns in you. Kiko Ska says, so it is your thumb then. I do kind of have a pointy thumb, but I think I made it like extra pointy in the painting, but I could probably trim it down just a little bit. Kiko Ska says, I think because you have cold highlight and warm shadows. Yeah, you know what? That's a good observation. Yeah, he's saying that I have these warmer shadows underneath here, but then these very cool highlights everywhere else. Or especially here, that's more cool. This has slightly of a neutral lighting, but oh, I like it. Nebula Fox says, flip the blue hand vertically as the thumb should be pointing up. Oh yeah, if they're shaking, let me do that. There we go. Let's see here. Angie Valda says that makes a cool print. Add a fall background merging into a winter background, and it's a masterpiece. Yeah, I might work with this hand thing more. Something about it I actually really do like. Liazol Hell says looks like a mermaid. Oh yeah, it could be like a mermaid hand. Because I really like very corpsey, scary looking mermaids, so I could see this being a hand of a mermaid. Wixed with 2 eyes says, any hints for the contest? Oh, that's right. At the very end of the stream, I promised a hint for the contest. So the contest will most likely be out next week. It may be a little longer, but most likely it will be out next week. And the final hint that I'll give you is bitter and sour. And those are the last hints I'm going to give you. The Terminal Glow says it could also give the impression of like a post-op style. Yeah, I could see that too. There's just something. Yeah, I'm gonna explore this later tonight. I'm gonna paint more with the hand, but yeah. Okay. So that was our little demonstration on shading techniques or blending techniques, I should say, and then the hand demonstration. Uh, Thank you so much for coming to this live stream today. Like I said, we do these every Wednesday at 2 p.m. Central Time. Usually I'll post an hour or two before what we're going to be doing on our community page / Facebook and DeviantArt and all the social media that we're on. And next week, I actually know what we're going to be doing. We're going to be doing a 4-hour traditional live stream. Unless if I finish earlier, but essentially I have a Kickstarter coming out next week, and in celebration of that, I wanted to do more of a traditional stream where I draw an entire character from start to finish. It will most likely, probably, definitely be my character Red from my novel Swordplay. So if you want to see a traditional drawing of a character from start to finish, that is what I will be working on, and I'm pretty excited about that. So if you want to get your stuff on the fridge alongside what we have so far, we have my address below that you can send magnets to. And I believe, let me double check. Yes, all the info is still there. So if you just click the link below and you want to send it, I will gladly hang it on the fridge as it hangs behind me with every live stream that we do. And if it's bigger than the fridge, I will post it either above, like Tigel's drawing up there, or I will put it on the fridge until we run out of room. Then I'll start utilizing the rest of the room behind me on the fireplace here. Okay, so one last time, thank you guys so much for coming to this live stream. We should have a new tutorial coming out tomorrow or Friday on subsurface scattering on the concept side. And I think that's all I got. Yeah, so my last words of advice are keep drawing. And if you were here at the very beginning, please do not be self-depreciative of your own work. That's so harmful. Please don't do that. Be positive about your outlook on your art career and hang in there, guys. Okay, bye everyone. Bye.